Something that I found fascinating when I first tried playing a tabletop RPG was how little I, as the player, actually needed to know about the rules of the game. A good game master can usher a party of brand new players through an adventure, facilitating their requests within the confines of the rules, even when the players themselves aren't quite sure what they're doing. Worlds of Aria is a self-proclaimed Dungeons & Dragons-like that seeks to bring that same level of accessibility to a light-hearted take on tabletop RPGs. Worlds of Aria can be taken on alone or with a total of up to 4 players, either locally or online. Any vacant spots will be filled by CPUs that can be managed by the human players. It is worth noting that these characters have no AI of their own. Rather, the player simply inherits them as extra characters. So if you are playing solo, you'll be managing all 4 members of your party. For my wife and I, who were playing together, we each wound up assigning ourselves one of the 2 remaining party members to manage. The story unspools as a series of narrative vignettes. As dialogue plays out, you'll occasionally have opportunities to make choices that will affect how the story goes forward. You may, for example, be confronted with a guard who you can choose to fight, bribe, sneak past, or offer a drink to. The entire party doesn't have to agree either, and each player is free to take their own action. Individual character stats will also factor into the likelihood of any given action succeeding. This is represented by a percentage displayed next to each character's icon above the action in question. Other times, an action's chance of success may be entirely dependent on what other characters do, leading to a massive number of permutations at any given time. Success or failure is determined by a skill check rolled via percentile dice, which are a pair of 10-sided dice. The higher your stats on a given skill, the higher your percentage chance for success. For example, if you have a 75% chance of success, you'll need to roll a 75 or lower in order to pass the check. It's a very simple and easy to understand system. The only other contributing factors to your rolls are each character's unique powers. These can only be used a select number of times throughout your campaign, but have a chance to significantly alter your roll. The wizard I played as could draw a card from a deck that could have a negative or positive number on it. This number would then be added or subtracted from my roll. Once I used a card, it was gone for good. My wife played as a pirate who had a similar power, but each use cost 1 gold coin. One of our other characters had a power that could be used only 3 times in the entire campaign, but guaranteed them the best possible result on a roll. There are no complex combat mechanics, just a simple percentile roll for every situation. Part of me did wish for some more complex rolls just to spice up gameplay a little, but on the other hand, it keeps Worlds of Aria extremely accessible for everyone. One area where things do get tripped up a little is in its user interface. The entire game was very clearly built with a mouse and keyboard in mind, and the mapping to a controller feels pretty inconsistent. At times, you'll control a freely moving cursor, emulating the PC experience, but other times you'll awkwardly shift to that same cursor being hard-locked to specific UI elements. But moving between these UI elements would occasionally pose issues, or a cursor that appeared to be highlighting an icon wouldn't actually be highlighting it until you had sort of moved it to the icon it was already on. There are a lot of little UI bugs like this. Even when I was just using the cursor, there were plenty of times where I'd struggle to get it to line up with a small button on the screen, such as when I need to open a character's inventory. Most of the time, this was a mere inconvenience, but during a few timed decision prompts, we actively struggled to get characters positioned on the correct choices, especially considering that we were each managing multiple characters, and the countdown does not adjust based on how many players are actually playing. So if you're playing solo, you only have 10 seconds to move all 4 characters, and I can say from experience that that can be challenging. I did also notice a couple instances where when trying to drop an item into my inventory, I accidentally dropped it behind the UI element instead, and then couldn't pick it back up because that element of the UI was in the way. These are all little bugs, but they do sort of add up. Hopefully, they can be patched in the very near future. Worlds of Aria is a highly accessible, well-written, tabletop-inspired adventure. It can make for a fun adventure with your regular party, or an intro to people who are completely unfamiliar with this style of game. Veterans may find some of the mechanics a bit too simple to get heavily invested in, but it's clear that isn't Worlds of Aria's goal. It is definitely at its best the more human players you have, as empty slots ultimately just become extra characters for your party to manage in addition to their own. The UI is pretty clunky and can at times cause legitimate problems. But Worlds of Aria is ultimately a charming adventure that bridges the gap excellently between tabletop RPG and party game. This video is made possible by our generous supporters on Patreon. Did you know that Nintendo World Report is funded directly by fans like you? When you support Nintendo World Report on Patreon, you get immediate access to multiple exclusive podcasts every month, exclusive Discord channels, an early look at select content, and more, all for as little as $1 a month. Check out patreon.com/NWR for all the details.